So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first of two information sessions for the 2025 World Coffee Roasting Championship. This session is specifically about the sample roaster for the competition, the Link sample roaster by Nucleus Coffee Tools. We'll just do an introduction of ourselves today. So I'm hosting today. My name is Jordan Montgomery. I'm the Marketing Director for Nucleus Coffee Tools. I'm joined today by Sam Cora, Director of Nucleus Coffee Tools, Jerome, who is Sales and R&D for Nucleus Coffee Tools, and Sean Ellis from Kaffelogic. So Sam, if you want to say a quick little 30-second hello.
Yeah, perfect. Hey guys, it's very nice to connect with everyone. Obviously looking forward to seeing you all in Houston. Unfortunately this time it'll be just the Jordan, myself, and Jerome and Angus traveling. Sean won't be making this trip, but he's here based on the first one for support. And we're super excited, as people might be aware. The sponsorship is a collaboration between Nucleus and Kaffelogic to bring Link to the World Championships. And this idea is to get you guys all prepared on any questions or basic functions if you haven't used the machine, so you get a bit more familiar with it.
Awesome. And we've got Jerome here as well. I believe it's about 1 a.m. in Australia where you are. So thank you very much for waking up, taking your time.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. Really excited to see you all over in Houston. Roasting comp always is like one of my favorite ones because it's blind. There's no presentation. Everything gets assessed blind. Just really excited to see you all start to understand where everyone is going with everything, with their cupping evaluation, with their roast plan. I'm really curious to see which direction everyone goes. This session will be perfect for you guys to ask any questions regarding any kind of functionality, any little bits of rule questions, and etc. Just really excited for this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Sean, I believe you're probably suffering the most because it's 3 a.m. where you are in New Zealand, I believe. So thank you so much for joining, taking your time.
Oh, always a pleasure. Yeah, howdy everyone. I'm Sean. I work for Kaffelogic. A lot of my job is helping develop the Nucleus Link roaster, so I get to spend a lot of time with these amazing guys, and really trying to change the game. I'm going to be here as any kind of extra support, throw in a bit of insight where I can. But yeah, unfortunately, I won't be in Houston this year, but you'll be in good hands.
Awesome. So I guess we'll get underway today with talking about, I guess, the context of the Link in the competition. As last year was our first year, so this is the second year the Link will be used as the sample roaster. So the first year in Copenhagen, we had, I believe, 21 competitors. There were 23 originally. Two of them couldn't attend. So there were four different stages, four different roasters, and all the competitors used them over, I believe, 1.5 days. This year, it's slightly different. The competition has expanded, so there will now be 30 competitors this year. Well, that's the plan. Hopefully, everybody makes it. And there'll be 5 stages. However, the sample roasting component is going to be, in some ways, a little bit more condensed and in some ways a bit more spread out. So the first sample roasting will actually take place on your orientation day. So I don't know whether or not you've received your schedules just yet, but it'll be quite a busy day the day before on the orientation day, the day before the competition starts. So there is an orientation. Following that directly are some demo slots for you to talk to Sam, Jerome, and I on the ground in Houston. We'll be there with the links, and you can ask us more questions face to face about how to use the roaster. And then I believe about an hour and a half after that, the first sample roasting starts. That will follow into the second day, and there'll be a full day of sample roasting as well. So I advise you to definitely check the schedules and make sure you know your competitor number, when you'll be competing and on which day, because you don't want to be caught off guard going straight from orientation to demo into the competition. So I guess we'll kind of kick off a bit more of a collaborative talk, not just me talking, talking about the origin of the Link roaster. So as I'm talking as well, feel free to add any questions into the group chat, which we can address as we go or later on. So maybe Sam and Sean, Sean, you were saying that you have been quite involved in the development and ongoing development of the Link. And Sam, I often say to people that the Link is just your brain in a box. So maybe the two of you could talk about how we got started with the Link and how it became the roaster that it is today.
Yeah, of course. I'll jump in and start. So, as I said, Link is a collaboration between Kaffelogic and Nucleus. Kaffelogic is an amazing manufacturer and had a lot of new technology that we saw a lot of value that we could build a system around the base hardware that would allow roasters, much like yourself, into understanding a bit more about coffee and profiling using smart technology based on density. We started working on it early 2020, I believe, and got together with some ideas. And what really solidified it was, again, a competition, or WCE competition, not so much the roasting, but the brewers that realized that we had something that we could work on, and we've developed it out from there with a lot of exciting features that are unique to this machine, which we'll cover.
Yeah,
And Sean,
it's been
oh, sorry, you go ahead.
all good. Yeah, it's been a really exciting road. There's just constantly work behind the scenes just to make things better and easier for roasters, producers, anyone that gets their hands on the unit. Yeah, we spend a lot of hours behind the scenes testing and working and fine-tuning and refining, just to make the experience so much better, more polished. And I think that when it comes to really getting the most out of your samples during the competition, I think it's in a really good state to really get the most flexibility out of it.
Awesome. So I guess in the context of that, where it's come from, let's talk about the basic features and functions of the roaster. So for someone who has never seen or used a link, I guess in 100 words or less, how would you describe what the purpose of the roaster is for? Maybe Sam, you could kick us off with it, and then Sean, you can weigh in as well.
Yeah, of course. So idea is to get a good analysis of what your coffee is in a fair and honest expression. You'll be utilizing this in the competition to make assessments on maybe where you'll head with the roast plans based on the coffees that were supplied, and allowing you to understand how you might translate that roast to the stronghold, which will be the competition machine that you'll be doing your production roasting on. Yeah.
So Sean, following on from that, if you were to, well, I guess for these competitors in this competition who may be familiar with other roasters, let's take the examples of maybe a Kawa, a roast, something like that, something that's been in the market for a little bit longer. What kind of comparisons would you make if they're using it for the first time in the competition?
I think that comparatively, you might find that it's going to be a little bit more straightforward. Kind of once you get through the intro, being able to actually get sample out and start evaluating your samples, it's going to be a lot more straightforward. And the sort of like friction to start really exploring your green, with quick fan speed changes, with quick profile changes, and also just the general assessment through the Link app, is just going to be very streamlined. I think given the pretty short time constraint on what you have to really work with the green, I think that you're going to find there's going to be a lot more flexibility just at your fingertips, with the Link.
And for Jerome, I guess you're very involved in competitions. I know this past weekend you were just helping people in the Australian Brewers Cup or in the regional competitions. You designed the profile and the link that Martin Berthel used to win the World Brewers Cup last year. What's your experience with people who, especially competitors who are approaching it for the first time? Sean says it's relatively straightforward, but for people who are coming into a professional roasting competition, who might be used to a little bit more technicality and having to adjust things, how would you find, how do you think that people should and could approach this when using it for the first time?
Yeah, of course. I think it's honestly such a good resource for roasters because for us, we're quite data driven as a whole. You always want to know everything that's actually going on with the coffee, what the process is, what the style of the coffee is, where do we think it's grown. We always like to put a lot of guessing work into it. And I think Link really helps in taking the guesswork out so the roaster can actually control what kind of style that they actually want the final cup to be. And within the whole entire system, you're basically entering a lot of data points to figure out what exactly position you want this coffee to be. And then that allows as a roaster full customization, whether you want something that has a very quick dry phase, whether it's something that's a shorter or a longer kind of style of Maillard and development. I'm sure we're going to go over the manual profile selection, which is a little bit like one of my favorite, because that's where you get to really customize your style. And getting started, if you've never used a link, I always suggest people to try and go through each and every one of the packs and start to cup them blind, because you'll always be surprised on the style that actually comes out of every single pack. All of them are such a true representation. It's more about finding your sweet spot to see where the coffee can go.
Nice. And you talk about, I guess, the variability of people trying different packs and different approaches. The four of us actually had a call last year following the World Coffee Roasting Championship, where we evaluated the top 10 competitors, their roasts, different approaches that they had. And it was quite interesting because quite a few of the top competitors, I think it was maybe 6 out of the top 10, just used the profiles that were recommended by the link. There were only a few custom profiles that people had designed. So I guess, Sam, we can start with you. I remember you saying at the time that you thought it was just a testament to the roaster and the fact that it can make incredible coffee. Going into this year, do you think that we'll see more people doing that, just trusting the link, or do you expect some customization as well?
Look, I do think that, as people know, with the time constraint, the purpose of the sample roast component is to get an understanding of it. So I see a lot of people using maybe some of the cupping spaces. I would strongly encourage competitors, if they're looking for translation, to consider some of the aspects of the Omni space, which is new in terms of the overhaul we've done, which wasn't available to them as a base point from the first time we ran the competition. I think that that space is going to allow, once you have an understanding of the coffee, potentially a better translation to your production from a time perspective or approach that you might be looking for. But I definitely saw a mix. Like, I got some feedback from competitors that they found from using it that the filter space was more similar to what they were looking to achieve as well. So I think a good understanding would be, have a look at some of the roast plans. I'll share briefly later on the call some visualization that we have, some aids about the roast plans that are available, what their goals are. We'll put this together as a package and make sure that it's accessible for you guys to study before the competition, so you can understand the purpose of the different plans, and then maybe what might suit what you're looking to target on the stronghold when you put it across to production.
Yeah, I think it's a great segue into, I mean, the next segment we wanted to talk about was actually what needs to be done in the competition. Jerome, you mentioned that, you know, the sample roasting isn't actually a scored component. It's just, you know, I guess getting an insight into the coffee so that you can approach the next stage, which is that production roasting on the stronghold. So I guess whilst competitors are exploring the options with the link, how would you view them as needing to prioritize their time? Do you think they should do, as you said, go through each of the packs, or is it a matter of doing a cupping roast of the coffee that's provided and then making a decision from there? What would your advice be?
Yeah, for me, I always suggest always getting the data from the actual coffee. You can start to see and find out your profile kind of style from there. As you were talking before, a lot of them were trusting the system in general, and we found like a good tendency where people were using a lot of cupping D and then starting to see how much time they actually had. I know that we're allocated either 30 to 60 minutes, and that's going to be briefed over the competitor orientation on that first day you were saying. But I definitely highly suggest like using the algorithm and starting to really figure out where this coffee can suit. There's so many different preferences that will help as well, because as we know, coffee comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and a big feature that we'll be able to use that wasn't utilized as much last year was the fan adjust. And that's where you can do a little bit more of a positive or a negative to get the ideal oscillation that you actually want, allowing you to have a little bit more customization and seeing the effect of airflow, but utilizing the algorithm will just help you so much. That OmniSpace, as Sam was saying before, will be such a good one as well, because you can see what temperature can actually do as well, having a higher temperature crack point versus a lower temperature crack point, how this is actually going. But for time constraints, I would always suggest doing cupping and then just constantly seeing different styles of the coffee, one that's a little bit more extended development, a little bit less, just to have those comparisons, because when you are evaluating it with your coach afterwards and talking back and forth, you can come with the right roast strategy of how you're wanting to apply it over to the stronghold as well.
So we've referenced already that there are the Omni profiles, and within the link there's Omni, espresso, filter, and cupping. Generally speaking, I mean, the cupping profiles are the shortest out of all of them, unless you're doing an exceptionally low development filter roast or something like that. So I guess, yeah, like you're saying, within the time constraints, it's probably the best idea to do, you know, 1 or 2 cupping roasts, have that evaluation of the coffee, and make the decisions from there. Sean, you mentioned earlier, I guess, talking about like translating a roast from a sample roast to a production roast with the stronghold. It's a question that we, you know, Nucleus get asked very often. I'm sure you do at with the Kaffelogic team as well. How would you go about, this is a bit of a loaded question, sorry, but you know, how would you go about translating a roast from the link to a larger roaster that has different methods of applying heat and different, you know, ways of profiling?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we're still kind of trying to perfect. But I'd probably say that majority of it is definitely going to be just figuring out what your coffee likes to do in the sample roaster, how it likes to kind of behave, is going to be a big note to then sort of take those styles across. Otherwise, we're definitely going to be looking around sort of like crack times. We're going to be looking around development time, and just sort of trying to replicate. I know, Sam, you've got a little bit more information around this particular area than I do.
Yep.
For this.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, hopefully you guys can see the share screen, correct?
Yeah, I can see that.
So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the roast plans and options, just to allow you, as I said, this is information that we will share with you guys so that you have it. But so you know, with the spaces and how it works, is essentially there are default plans. There is 24, sorry, wrong one, 4.1.2, 24 roast plans that you'll have the choice from. 5 of them are generally dedicated towards more of a cupping approach. You have 6 filter, a few espressos, which, you know, potentially you can manipulate the DTR percentage in order for that to work for your competition. And then the Omni space. And as we were talking, definitely the filter, cupping, and Omni are the areas that you would look to really engage in. This information, which we can look to study, as I said, it gives a really good breakdown of how the roast plans are designed to alter different phases when it comes to, you know, your dry phase, Maillard phase, and development phases from a preset, which then you can move, adapt, adjust. You can take these roast plans as you wish, which I'll show you later on this segment, and also make some edits to this base default plan if you're wanting to try a few things out after doing a couple of roasts. What we can see with the cupping space is it's definitely more of that 7-minute, you know, 6-minute 50 style roast. And then remember, you'll have about 1.5 minutes when it comes to cooling. When it comes to filter, again, if you want to play with some different areas in terms of lengths of roast, increase time to increase ratio, you can start to work with a little bit of variation and different approaches when it comes to, as you can see, filter E here has a higher heat application at the start of the roast, and what that might impact on the taste, that you can maybe understand some of the approaches when it comes to translating it across. And again, we have, you know, espresso space. Maybe it can be used, but I can't really see a lot of work being done there for the purpose. But definitely this space for me is one that I can see great translation and potential in when we're looking to explore similarities where you can, you know, essentially alter it from a short to long roast, and it has a natural arc or trajectory curve through the Omni space that will allow good translation, that you can maybe do a couple of quick roasts and then, you know, your last one start to play around with some different length times when it comes to those different profiles.
So this information as well, for everyone's reference, is on the Nucleus Coffee Tools website as well. If you're on the link page under the products link, there's maintenance pages, manuals, and there's a page called How to Use the Link. All the information about all the different roast plans is on there. Long descriptions about every single roast plan and the profiles within them. It describes why we've designed each of them, what you expect from the coffee, default development times, default settings. So I highly encourage you to have a look at that as well. I guess from here, maybe what we can do is do a quick demonstration, maybe a bit of a run through from start to finish of if someone has never used a link roaster before, how they might go about doing density reading, selecting a profile, and then maybe we can look at doing some edits as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. So link and what you'll have access to in the competition will be you'll have the bean trays will generally provide I think 3 to 5 per station, dosing cup, density tube, there'll be a scale and the link unit itself. There'll also be an element that you can use the application on, whether that's a mobile phone or direct through the computer, which will also have the monitoring software. I'm going to start just with the process of doing a density reading, and then we'll move through the application and then into the software. So I'm just going to pin a page. What we should be able to see, guys, is the link roaster and, you know, the equipment that you will see online. Essentially, it's very important in order to run the device that we focus on utilizing the density tube. The way in which this would work is we're going to take the tube, which I've got here, put it on the scale, open up the lid and put that to the side, and then we would pop that into the bean tray. We would then get our coffee. We would pour the coffee into this and then using the lid, level it off, and then get the reading of that particular weight. From that, we can then jump across into the application. So let me just share that screen for you guys, and then we can show you how that would work. So the application is pretty straightforward, but it allows you to navigate into the different areas where you can adjust the roaster. The way in which this works, and just let me stop sharing for one moment. Sorry, I've just lost the application. I just need to find where it is. Perfect. All right, so I'll just reshare that for you guys. When it comes to the application, essentially there's different ways in which you can use the link system. High recommendation for those who are wanting to go off an approach when it comes to recommendation is going into the manual profile mode. What this will allow you is the opportunity to select the roast plan that you may want to work on. If you just want a good starting point, you can also use the new sample entry. New sample entry mode is essentially you say what style of roast you're looking for, whether it's the cupping, filter, espresso, or omni, and it will recommend what it believes is the best starting point from a roast plan, power curve, development percentage, and fan setup for the system. You can use either in the competition. It's up to you with how you would want to work with it. Let's say we want to do a new sample entry. It would allow us to then select what style of roast do we want it to select the roast plan from. Let's say we want to go cupping. You would have the option of then entering in the density. Let's say it was the 66 as the density and that coffee was washed, and push done. It would suggest to you which roast plan. If you want to have a little bit more information on that, you would click on that particular device and it would show you what that roast plan was looking at. I think I've lost the app. Sorry, it's not up for you guys to see, right?
No.
Okay, apologies. I'll just reopen it. That was me clicking the wrong button. Perfect. Should be up again. So that'll give the suggestion. In the preference menus, I would recommend that what we're going to have turned on is advanced Arabica and also advanced roast details. You will not need to play around with these settings because we will have it set at the 110 volt, which will be what you'll be using in the US. When it comes to those settings, what that now allows us to do is if we do the same setting, we can import the screen size. This is going to be a very handy tool for you guys because it's going to recommend what fan settings we should adjust away from in combination with the density of the coffee that you put in, which will allow a correct movement when it comes to the coffee. If we wanted to use the manual profile mode, we have that option by going into manual profile mode. We select the screen size because we've now turned that feature on. Let's say we want to work in the Omni space. You can see now we can dictate the roast plan that we want to use. And then when we put in the information, as you saw me do before, we will get an understanding of where that would work from a selection point of view. Another feature which I think is going to be very helpful, which you also can use in the competition, is the advanced dial-in. Let's say you've done one roast and for whatever reason, the roast is showing that it was maybe earlier than expected or later than expected first crack. You can go into this mode, again, enter the details that you've just done. Let's say I was doing the Omni D space. It was 66. We had a 9-minute crack, and our starting profile was 201 as recommended, and wash process as the thing. What that will then do is reprocess the information and suggest a better starting power curve for you guys to work on, which is going to be very helpful in the short amount of time and quick decision if you want to get an optimal, I guess, version of that roast blend. Once we have that information, we can then jump across into the roaster or through the application studio in order to edit, work, or change that particular profile. I'm going to quickly just bring us up to date with the studio. Hopefully you guys can see that now. With the studio, what we can now do is we can go into with this button here, which is the black toggle, access profiles, and let's say we want to access that particular profile. And we'll just wait for that to load. Perfect. So 201 Omni is what we want to do. We have the option that would be now sent across the machine, but if we want to make some edits, we can click this black stylo option here, adjust and make edits to the profiles or what we want to see if there's different elements that we want to play around with by pulling, adjusting, adapting when it comes to working with a profile. Some really core information, which is going to be important to you. We will have this set up in expert mode, which will give you a bit of features and understanding. Some core things to think about is when it comes to the power or preheat wattage, because that will allow you to maybe dictate start temperatures, etc. And then some of the other elements of the coffee when it comes to minimum rate of rises and how it's going to be set up from a point of view. So we have that profile. If we wanted to use the profile that we've just edited or changed, we would be doing save to roaster. That's going to save a copy of that across the roaster, and then you can utilize that profile. In between each competitor, we'll be removing the logs, removing any saved or edited profiles, so the machines will be clean. So whatever you're working on, if you're doing something custom or whatever you've approached, is not going to be able to be accessed by someone who is coming onto that same station later on in the particular session.
I might add as well that we had a few people asking us if they could, if people who already have a link, if they could design a profile and bring it with them.
Yep.
And then add it into the roaster. I've asked the World Coffee Championships and they've said definitely not. They clarified in their new rules that you can only bring a cupping spoon, paper, and a pen. You're also allowed to bring headphones or earphones, but nothing that connects to a digital device.
Yep. Yeah, and on that, as I said, if you do want to edit, everything will need to be done in the session that you would need to make prior. I don't believe that the practice session you're also able to create something and then take that across. I think that you would need to edit it, save it in the time allotted slot that you have, and then utilize that profile as you wish. When it comes to the roasting, what you also have the access during the competition is if you want to go back in, go to your logs, potentially open up one of the profiles that or something that you've roasted, and then get a bit of information about what's happening, zoom in, see stuff. You can also access that information while you're roasting live. Some functionality why I have the studio opened. So if you do want to be utilizing the studio, you have the functions as the live roast is going on. You can monitor and see the ROR. You can also add the different phase timing. So let's say you want to log color change, you'd be clicking the CC first crack, and you want to amend, edit, delete, or alter that. You can use the functions to create those in here. And then again, if you want to stop the roast during the session, you can use the end button. One word of warning is if you click end, it will automatically terminate the roast. So ensure that if you are utilizing from the studio that you're able to understand that will stop the roast at that point, and if that's what you're looking for. I'm going to just quickly switch back to the camera phone so that you can actually see operation from the unit itself. So something to note about the video is that when it comes to selecting your coffee, everything can be done directly from the unit itself. So something to have a look at here is if you want to select a profile, the far right button here is going to allow us to get access and do the same selection of style. Once we select, let's say we're in filter now, you have your A, B, C, D, E, whatever the plan that's recommended is. Let's say it was E. We use now this fourth from the right button. Fourth from, the left button. That will now open up the profiles and we can adjust to the different power curves and settings needed. If we didn't want to make core edits and we're just looking for simple edits, we can adjust the development percentage at the start of the roast. You can also do that anytime during the roast if you want to extend or shorten. My strong recommendation here is if you are going to be manually terminating at a point that is not wanting to be dictated by the roast, increase that number to a higher setting, and that way it gives you a long buffer that will not automatically look to stop that roast at that particular point. The next element will be fan adjustment. So the application will recommend you for that particular density and screen size, what fan you should do in that particular adjustment setting. You can up that and select that in. Also, you can access the fan by pushing the far menu button once or twice, depending on what phase you're into the roast, and you'll be able to adjust that live throughout the roasting process as well. Unfortunately, I don't have a coffee in, so I can't show you that function while we're operating the system. The thing to note is the roaster itself is variable batch size. So I know the rules say a roaster between 100 and 500 grams. The link maximum is 100 grams with what you'll have access to roast in. But let's say that you want to roast in a smaller batch size at 100 grams or 50 grams to get the most out of the green. You're able to take that density reading. You do need a minimum of around 80 to 70 grams with the density reading, but it doesn't stop you from roasting 50-gram batches. If you want to be super efficient and roast a lot to experiment, you have the ability to control that before you start the roast. As soon as we push play, it's going to then start the roast. Thing to note, the roaster is designed to start at ambient temperature and heat the green coffee with the roaster in terms of how it works with the preheating phase. So that's completely normal. There will not be any adjustments or adaptations to needing to put in a drop temperature from your point of view, but you can have a look at potentially editing the start of the roast and increasing the wattage or the preheat phase if we're looking to be more aggressive in that particular line.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Very, very comprehensive. Again, if anybody has any questions as we're going, if something's too fast or you want some more clarification, feel free to drop a comment in the chat as well. I guess while we're still talking about, what's happening on the ground in the competition, what people have to do. Sean, maybe I can get you to weigh in on this. You were there, I guess, watching nearly every single competitor last year in Copenhagen. And I understand that there is a capacity for competitors to register a technical timeout or like a technical fault. If they believe that there's an issue, that would then be taken to the World Coffee Championships team, who would then verify with a member of the Kaffelogic or Nucleus Coffee Tools team. Now, you won't be there this year, but maybe you can give us a bit of insight into some issues that people faced last year. Not necessarily problems with the roaster, because I believe they all function perfectly, but things that people thought were issues that were resolved.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a good idea to go through the rules and just kind of the power that you have in a situation if there is a potential technical issue. Under section 12 of the Roasting Comps rulebook, during a competition, if the competitor believes there is a technical problem with any of the WCRC provided equipment, they should contact the head judge or WCRC stage manager immediately. So if you believe something is going wrong, find the nearest person to you. It'll probably be the stage manager, and just let them know. If there is a technical issue, if they decide that it is a technical issue, then you will be allocated that extra time to their judgment. Something that we kind of just faced the last time was occasionally there would be a few connection issues. Just as, you know, people are kind of working around their space, sometimes knocking the USB cable, things, you know, just kind of not connecting super well. So just being a little bit more mindful around that. We didn't really have too much go wrong beyond technical, beyond connection. So I think that all in all, it should be fairly straightforward. I don't think there'll be too much at risk. At the moment, you know, the units have been running extremely smoothly. We've managed to refine everything, get it a lot more robust than it was in Copenhagen. But yeah, I think it's just important to note that if there is any issue, grab the nearest person that you can, and then a member of Nucleus Coffee Tools will come through, give you a hand with what you need. Most of the time, if there is any kind of bug that'll come through, it'll be a super quick reset of the unit. It doesn't remove any data. It's not a factory reset. All it does is just refresh the firmware. So you're not going to be losing anything. You're not going to be losing any information. All it does is just basically re-wake the unit up, and that solves 90% of the issues that could happen. So just be very mindful around the connect cable, the USB-C cable. Try not to put too much strain on it, especially at the back of the unit, and you should be good to go.
Amazing, thank you. I guess just off the back of that, there were one or two things that were addressed with me last year by competitors, and that was they were concerned about, you know, the competitor before them not cleaning the unit properly, or, you know, files being left on the computer and people using each other's profiles. As Sam already mentioned, all the units will be wiped clean, not factory reset, but, you know, all the profiles that have been used prior will be taken off before the next competitor comes on. All of the chaff collectors will be emptied. The cables will be checked. Everything will be tip-top, ready for you to go. So no one should have any concerns with that. Again, if you do have any concerns, just grab your nearest representative or a member of our team, and we'll help you out as well.
While you're on that point, Jordan, something I'd like to add is I strongly recommend that every batch that you do, we do empty the chaff collector. It's a very simple process that it's opening up the lid. The chaff collector will come out and you'll have a little stage bin underneath to empty that, especially if you are roasting in 100 grams. If you're roasting 50 grams, sometimes you can occasionally get 2 or 3 roasts, no problems. Remember that if this is not emptied, one, you run the risk of starting a fire. The other and more important is if there's not efficient airflow for the machine, it may affect the quality of the roast that you do. So it is in your best interest to be emptying that chaff collector in order to allow the roaster to have the most efficient airflow that we are able to, or you are able to see the coffee and the potential that you're trying to get out of the roast, but maybe not have a jaded opinion because you have not emptied that, and therefore the airflow is restricting it, retaining more heat, and potentially overshooting the target of what the profile was designed to do or what you're trying to target.
Awesome.
In particular, sorry, Jordan, in particular, that mesh top, that can sometimes get chaff caught in it. Strongly recommend giving that a good tap, making sure that that mesh itself is completely clear, because that is what's going to be causing your blockage.
Yeah, that's also been addressed with the volunteers that will be there as well. So when those stations are clean between each one, they'll be checking that as well, checking the mesh, checking the chaff collectors, checking inside the roaster themselves, all cables, laptops, and phones as well. If we have phones there, so you could use the Link app if they're not on the computers. I'm mindful that Jerome and Sean, you're probably both wanting to go back to bed, so we'll try not to drag this out too much longer. There are 2 more things I want to go through, the first being questions and the last one being the roast bar. So we did have a few questions that were submitted to us by people that registered for this webinar or the one tomorrow. So it's kind of repeating a few things that we've already gone through, but we'll address them again. So maybe Jerome, you could take this first one. So in the time frame that we have for sample roasting, what is the best approach for maximizing our time to experiment with profiling? I know that you mentioned the cupping profiles already, but, you know, it might be worth just doubling down on that.
I think like even another one that we didn't touch on before was the advanced dial-in. Advanced dial-in is something that was used a lot for the guys that actually came first and second last year. So basically every single roast that they did, they would indicate where the first crack was happening. Then they would manually do it. So within the Link app, you can basically click onto your profile selector, select the advanced dial-in, use whatever pack that you're using, whether it's the decupping pack or a filter pack as an example. Simply enter in your first crack and enter in your start profile. It will automatically recommend you a profile so you can be sitting right within that sweet spot. That's going to be where the ideal results actually come from. The guy who won last year from China, he was very thankful about this because he did this for every single row. So he was able to see his first interpretation of it and what the app was suggesting, which gave him such good insight whenever he was doing it. He ended up using 50-gram batch sizes as well. 50-gram batch sizes will cool down a whole lot faster, meaning that you can do batch to batch a whole lot faster. So those would be some of my suggestions just from a time constraint to get as much out there as possible so that you can evaluate the coffee to its full potential and understand it even deeper, hopefully.
Yeah, especially given that the time is indeterminate. It's between 30 minutes and 1 hour. So I think everyone should be planning to only roast for 30 minutes. And if they end up having 1 hour, then that's fantastic. They can experiment a bit more. Great. And the second question that we had was one that we also addressed. Can I bring my own profiles to the competition if I've designed them already? I'm assuming that this means edited profiles. So Sam, I mean, maybe if you want to take this one. The short answer is no. But you mentioned before that people will have an opportunity to talk to us during the demo sessions after orientation. So your understanding is that there can be no actual hands-on use of the roaster or editing profiles in that time.
I don't believe that you can create a profile in your practice time and then have that come across to your competition space. You can access, as I said, the 1,010 profiles that are housed over the 24 roast plans. You have access to, everyone will have access to the default plans, but you cannot make any edits to those prior, save them to a USB or a device and bring that on stage with you and plug it in to have that across. Any edits or adjustments will need to be made in your time slot. But as I said, all of the default base profiles are going to be exactly as they are with a 4.1.2 profile pack, and you will have access to those prior and during the competition as your starting point to give you a better reference.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying. Our next question, I wasn't too sure how to answer. It was, how do you change between profiles? So I'm assuming this means that someone has roasted a coffee on a particular profile and then wants to swap to another. As Sam demonstrated earlier, you can very easily do that using the manual profile selection in the Link app. So that's selecting a particular roast plan, and then it will only give you solutions from within that roast plan. If you're on the computer, it was those drop-down menus. Maybe Sam, if you want to bring this up again.
Of course.
Yeah.
You should be able to see my computer now. If we want to click on it, we'll be clicking on this little icon here. You'll be going to your profiles, and then you'll be able to see what housing the roast style will sit in. So let's say that you've studied the plans and you want something from the cupping space. You will then see the 5 cupping plans that are housed within this space. Selecting one of those will then select that option, and then the different power curves that will control it from a amount of heat at what time phase, depending on the coffee. The application will recommend you a power curve, but let's say for whatever reason you particularly want to over or under power, you can look to change that. So that would be now sent across to the roaster. If I wanted to do a quick change and I'm going, you know what, I want to explore something from the Omni space, you'd be changing those areas and then again setting the power curve or the profile with what you would need and recommend. One strong encouragement here is when you change the roast style and maybe the roast plan, the power curve, if you've roasted it on 208 on cupping, will naturally not just progress across to the next space. Each roast plan has its own individual power curve rating. And I would very strongly recommend that you utilize the application when selecting which power curve to use, because it's not going to be a direct translation from cupping 208 to Omni 208. I can definitely tell you you'll be strongly overpowered when it comes to the approach if you're wanting the roast plan that's intended to be successfully achieved.
Just while you have this open, oh no, there it goes. I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate to people that when you're making those selections, when you're selecting the style of roast, whether that's Omni, espresso, cupping, whatever, you're selecting your roast plan, and then you're choosing a profile. As soon as you make those 3 selections, it's automatically sent to the roaster. You don't need to click anything else. The only other thing that's available to click there is that little stylo, that pencil symbol that Sam used earlier to edit. So you'll notice that when he goes through and makes these selections, that first one there, so yeah, espresso, what he was going to select, profile pack, and then again with profile. You'll notice at the very top of the screen, you'll see that there's a little loading bar there, and then eventually that'll turn over, and then you see it's going green. So I mean, I won't make you turn the camera onto the roaster, but that's already sent to the roaster. So nothing else needs to be done after those 3 selections.
You should be able to see the roaster itself, so you can see that espresso profiles directly over to that roaster.
Oh yeah, great. Awesome. The last question that we had was what happens if I have a technical issue? I think Sean covered that pretty thoroughly, so probably don't need to go into that again. But yeah, please just speak up. If you have an issue, put your hand up immediately, get one of the staff over there, get one of us over there, and we'll help you as best we can. If there was nothing else that we think we need to cover today or the competitors are interested in hearing about, we'll wrap up pretty soon. One last thing that I'll mention is that for the very first time, the World Coffee Roasting Championship is having a roast bar. So in other competitions such as the World Brewers Cup and the World Barista Championship, there is a bar in which competitors come, and it's a mandatory thing that they come and brew coffees, they work in a team, share coffees with the audience, and just have a great time in general. In the World Barista Championship, that is actually a component of people choosing a wild card to go to the next round. So the roast bar doesn't have that. It's not compulsory. It's an invitation only this year. It's invitation to all competitors to come and please roast some coffee on the link, share it with the audience. We want to make the World Coffee Roasting Championship more engaging for people who are coming to the expo in Houston. So please come along, spend some time with us. Bring other green coffees if you'd like, if you have something interesting. We'll have lots of green coffees with us. We'll be using green coffees from the sponsors of the competition as well. So it'll just be generally a great time for us to hang out, get to talk and get to know each other. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Follow up on that, Jordan. The idea behind the roast bar is to give you guys the exposure as the national champions. We want to celebrate your achievement, and we do know that a lot of the competition, unlike the other WCE competitions, is happening behind the scenes in the roasting competition. So we want to give an opportunity to you guys to be able to be front and center, engage with the audience, and have people come up and pick your brains on why you are the roasting champion, and also a chance to showcase some of your theories to public, and allow them to experience your coffees, because again, in all the competitions, most people don't get the opportunity to taste the coffees, or in your case, you're not presenting. So this is the great opportunity to connect and let people meet you, see you, understand, what your approach is. And it's just a great way to kind of be able to share, your thoughts on roasting and just coffee in general.
Great. Much more eloquently said than I said, Sam. Thank you. Great. Well, if there's nothing else we need to go through, I think we'll probably wrap it up for the day. I want to thank everyone for joining, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions as well. We've had an overwhelming amount of support this year, as we did last year, just for having the link in the competition. For us as co-sponsors, along with Kaffelogic, it makes us feel amazing to have national champions coming to us and asking questions, trusting our equipment, and we're really looking forward to seeing you all in Houston. For those of you who are not competing and just decided to join the chat, thank you so much for jumping in on the call. Yeah, that's pretty much it from me. If anyone else wants to say a few words.
Well, good. Thanks, Jordan. We look forward to seeing you guys, and best of luck. Anything that's not clear or you need more clarity, as Jordan did say, this meeting has been recorded. We will make this into a available page that you can go back and, study if there's particular things that maybe we move through too quickly. A great source of inspiration and understanding about the link is there's quite an extensive YouTube page where it talks about every aspect and feature. If you do want to learn more in depth from what we've covered today, I highly recommend you guys find the Nucleus Coffee Tools training website that's particularly dedicated to the link, and go through some of the information that you can access in some of the videos, which are going to give a step-by-step tutorial on specifics if you want to know more about editing, what to edit, how to edit, and some of those functionalities. We will be covering some of that in more depth when it comes to the orientation. So please, if you have a chance to use it or something doesn't seem clear, come to the orientation with your questions prepared, because it's your opportunity to ask us, some ideas. In the questions that you do ask, it's only fair that if we are doing group by group orientation, that the question you ask, do note that every competitor will be shared the answer. We don't want to play favoritism or look to support someone and give them an advantage in asking a question that not everyone has the answer to. But as we said, if there's a general starting point or a general tip, we will happily provide that for you.
Great, thank you, Sam. And Jerome and Sean, I think you can finally go back to bed now.
Thank you, Jordan.
Been a pleasure, everyone. Really looking forward to seeing everyone and seeing what everyone actually ends up using. It's such a versatile workspace to use, and really excited to see what you guys end up doing.
It's going to be super interesting. Good luck, everyone.
All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah, guys.
So.
Cheers.